and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name's Thomas, back with a very special video on the channel today. Another one of our should we sign videos for one of the more persistent rumours that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. But as always on these videos, I'm going to not talk too much today because we brought someone who knows a lot more about the player. Richard Hall, of course, chief correspondent for Football Italia, brilliant website for English-speaking fans of Italian football. He's joined me today to talk more about Allan. This is a player that clearly he wants to play under Ancelotti. Ancelotti clearly wants him for his system. Our central midfield needs a massive overhaul, I'm sure. We can all tell that from last season. It was very disappointing kind of end to what was a very, very long and drawn-out season. So, Richard, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on today.
No, glad to be here. Thank you. And going to be quite an interesting one to talk about, Alan, because he's quite an exciting player.
Well, that's very good to hear. So it's kind of the question we always kind of start off with. For someone that doesn't kind of know anything about him, what would you say are kind of a few of Allan's kind of standout attributes as a player?
Just a bit of background on Allan. He came over to Udinese in 2015. Udinese got a really good scouting network in South America. Pozzo family, who you guys all know, obviously, for owning Watford. And developed into the player he is today, coming through the ranks with Napoli under different coaches. And Allan's been touted as probably one of the best holding midfielders in Italy in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. When you look at some of his traits, in a sense, he can. What I like about him, he's quite versatile. It depends on who's playing alongside. So whereas a lot of people just think that he's this sort of tough tackling, deep line midfielder, there's more to his game than that. If you look at probably when he was playing alongside Jorginho in Maurizio Sarri's system, he knew that Jorginho was the metronome, the guy who was going to get the ball and look for those wide guys like Callejon or Insigne. So he did his job then of breaking up the play and giving the ball to in Jorginho. So if you'd have watched Allan in that season, you would have thought that his job was literally all he could do was stop the play, break it up, and give it to a guy who can play. But there's more to him than that. This guy, the biggest thing about him is and why I think he'd be particularly suited to the Premier League is that his engine is just incredible. The guy just doesn't stop. He can do more as well. He can be a little more offensive. You're never going to get a lot of goals from him. He's not what he's there for, but often in seasons he can pop up with 2, 3, 5 goals max. But what I like about him is he does have a good range of passing as well. So with Allan overall for Everton, I think what you're going to get is someone who's he's at the absolute peak of his career. He's got a great engine. He's an excellent tackler. Really good at breaking up the play, but also a guy as well who's got a good pass. And I like him as well. He's extremely confident. So, as a character, not scared at all to say what he thinks. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, and I think the relationship with Ancelotti is really important as well. And the biggest thing as well is that it's probably the right time for him to go now as well.
That's very interesting because obviously something we're definitely looking for in our midfield is definitely an engine. There's clearly we lack a lot of energy. We have players like Andre Gomez and Goodsion who don't suit a two in midfield naturally. They don't really have the energy, but Gomez can kind of perform better in his own role with more energy next to him, with a tackler, with a player that's happy to win the ball back and lay it off, as you mentioned, like Jorginho did when he played for Napoli. And so kind of in terms of comparisons, who would you kind of liken Allan to, who might be, easy to understand from like just a Premier League audience? So if no one's watched like Serie A before, if there was like a Premier League kind of comparison in terms of a midfielder, who would you kind of liken him to?
It's difficult in some respects to compare players like that, but on his good days, I could see definitely someone like N'Golo Conte. That sort of player. Again, you have the reference with Chelsea there, who you can see how he's played at times. I think if you called him out for just literally breaking up the play, just a deep line midfielder, I think you'd be doing him a massive injustice, as you would be with Allan. If you look at someone like Lucas Torreira at Arsenal, I would actually refer to him as probably Allan Light, because he's, again, he's another player who has that similar sort of role, but again, probably doesn't have as good a passing range as Allan does. So those are the sort of players I'd go down the line to compare him to if I had to. Allan's somewhere kind of in the middle of those. As I said, this is a guy whose qualities, I don't mind the N'Golo Conte comparison in some respects, because this is a guy who, Paris Saint-Germain, amongst others, have been desperate to get him for quite a while. Because as well, you look at the teams who have been after him in the past, and they're often teams with quite a lot of flair. who are looking for someone to play alongside a ball-playing midfielder. So, you can see that, and, for me, that sort of player is integral in a lot of these teams, especially when you look at his best performances for Napoli in the Maurizio Sarri, that role he had. So, yeah, there's a lot of quality there, and I think Everton should be pretty pleased with it so far. The way the negotiations are going.
Yeah, because we are definitely looking for a player that does unlock a player like Andre Gomez. Andre Gomez, clearly, he'll have a better passing range, but he's not as good defensively, and he really struggles without that kind of more defensive, as I mentioned, more kind of box-to-box kind of tackling role. But obviously, you mentioned there he almost moved to PSG. PSG were very keen on him last year. Obviously, that move didn't materialise for one reason or another. I'm sure one of them is definitely De Laurentiis, who we'll definitely get onto soon. He always comes up in these kind of discussions. But I mean, at the end of the day, Everton on PSG. I think I'm kind of stating the obvious there. So if he was kind of looking to go to PSG last year and PSG were keen on him, is his form almost declined recently? Because now he is now looking to move to Everton. There's rumours he's rejected Atletico Madrid, but that's all kind of, hearsay at the end of the day. We kind of confirm that. But clearly Everton are very interested and he clearly wants to move here. And we know Ancelotti's a massive factor, but has he seen some maybe decline in it from a footballing perspective, or why does he really want to leave Napoli now if he feels the time's kind of right now?
Well, firstly, you're not PSG. You've got more history. But no, I think with Allan, I don't think his form's declined as such. I think what's happened with him at the moment is Gattuso has come in to take over from Ancelotti. And the story here goes, we'll start from the beginning with this in a sense then. So under Ancelotti, Napoli have been used to playing this Maurizio Sarri, very cavalier, very quick system for some time. And when Carlo Ancelotti came in, the idea was that he would take that Maurizio Sarri style and give them more of a professional attitude in a sense, more, to get them over the line in these trophies that they missed out on. And at first it looked like he was going to do that. He could handle the big egos in the dressing room. So it was really a good move. However, as the season went on, and obviously Napoli aren't as well funded as some of the other teams in Serie A, Ancelotti went back to sort of his roots of being a coach and employed more of a 4-4-2. Now this, again, Allan played excellently in this 4-4-2. It suited him just as well as it did previously when Maurizio Sarri was in there with the three in the midfield. So still no problems for Allan, no form declining. Problem was the results didn't happen. A few of the Napoli players weren't happy in particular with the situation. And it wasn't necessarily Ancelotti that was maybe the problem, even though the football wasn't as nice on the eye. So De Laurentiis sent them into a retreat, where, and this has been going on for years in Italian football, where they pack up on a bad performance. The president comes into the change rooms and says, right, guys, you're going to a training camp 4 days, not seeing your families, that's it. So this is a little bit getting a bit outdated now, because these big professional stars don't particularly like to be told what to do in that sense. De Laurentiis isn't modern, should we say. And so what happened was that Allan in particular was very outspoken about this. And he was one of the ones who led what was a dressing room rebellion in a sense. Now, Carlo Ancelotti was actually on side on that and backed on the second time, backed the rebellion in the dressing room. First time they went into the Tiro. And so the second time, Carlo Ancelotti sort of said to the guys, you can go home unofficially. And there's a brilliant picture in the Time di Gazzetta dello Sport where Ancelotti's done the right thing by going to the Retiro, and he phones up De Laurentiis and there's no one here. So this obviously, De Laurentiis with the likes of Dries Mertens, there was some other players there who got heavily fined. Allan was one of them. And so there was obviously then the change of coach. Gattuso came in, and Gattuso and De Laurentiis were very much of the mindset to have a lot of discipline installed and to go back to the Maurizio Sarri sort of way of playing. Now, Gattuso, whether you say this is Allan out of form, I don't particularly think that. I think that some of those players that were involved in that dressing room rebellion don't really feature in Gattuso's side now. And I would say that is no real situation on form. It's more of a Gattuso De Laurentiis necessity, because he wants it to work as a team. He feels these players aren't pulling their weight. So there you have the problem. So, Gattuso hasn't featured in as much. He has played, but he's not featured as much as he did last time. I think he's only played about 16, 17 times this season, some starts at least. But that's coincided with Napoli having a new run of form. And their form has picked up. Gattuso as a coach has surprised everybody. Everyone thought he was just all blood and thunder. Instead, he's playing a very attractive brand of football, very similar to Maurizio Sarri. And so there's been no reason for players like Allan. There's been no huge issue. Now, when you ask about why would he want to move and what the situation is, that's all one big problem. Now, as anybody knows, that, whatever job you do, if your wife's not happy, you have another problem. And the thing is with Naples is a city, as if anyone, you can just watch the documentary, the new one with Maradona. And it's not just Maradona. If the Neapolitans love a footballer, it goes beyond. You go to Naples and it's the only place you get these little puppets of, these caricatures of every religious figure in the book, and then the footballers are next to them. It's the same thing. And as anyone who's, played in Naples, a lot of the players will say, and Allan says as well, when he went there, the way that he was welcomed and the passion and the support, it's almost it's amazing at first, then it became too overwhelming. Now, when things went wrong and he was sort of seen as this hero of the rebellion, it was too much again. But when the results were going wrong just before this, the Neapolitans also sort of, how can we put it, took it into their own hands. So, for instance, if you ever go to any, in the old days, if you went to any training ground in the UK, you'd get 20, 30 people maybe there. The ultras, the Sud of the Cover Nord, whatever it might be, and depending on the club, turn up in thousands, and they let you know if they're not happy. And so this is the situation in Naples, and more so than anywhere else. So, I always say, reference one of your other old players, Gascoigne, when he first turned up at Lazio, he said once, why do all the players, he said to Nestor and all the rest of the guys there and Signori, why do you drive such rubbish cars? And he said, well, you'll see. And after a bad result, he realised, because the fans will kick the cars to pieces on the way out. So it's that levels of intensity. And at the time when things were bad, Allan was, his wife was living alone, and she got burgled. And this was associated to the Neapolitan ultras. And so therefore she said, this isn't football anymore. That's enough. Enough's enough. So ever since then, his wife wanted to move. So that's what he hasn't moved before, because he's been in a good place with a good coach. Everything's been fine. Things have spiraled in a sense, and it's the right time. So in that sense, when you're looking for Allan's motivations, his wife's not happy in Naples. De Laurentiis doesn't particularly like him. Gattuso's got him out the squad on the words, potentially, of De Laurentiis, or the fact the results are going well. So he's not getting a game. So next season's not looking fantastic for him, but it's certainly, in my eyes, is not a dip of form.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I didn't realise kind of what I was getting into there. I had no idea about any of that kind of, I mean, I understand kind of De Laurentiis is obviously a very kind of difficult character. We're going to have to talk about him, because obviously it all comes down to negotiations, the fee. He's not the easiest man to deal with, clearly. Marcel Brands is a man that likes to try and kind of drive as hard as he can for a better price for our club. De Laurentiis isn't going to sell him easily. And we can see these negotiations probably going on for a very long time. And clearly, I mean, I'm glad to hear it's not a dip in form, because obviously we've had times now for the past couple of years, really, where we've had players coming from bigger clubs who are kind of on a decline in form, and they're coming here to potentially earn money. But that clearly doesn't seem like the case with Allan. He clearly wants to work with Ancelotti again. And Ancelotti clearly knows how to get the best out of him, because we've seen it as well with, we've been heavily linked with James Rodriguez in the past couple of days. Ancelotti's clearly looking to bring in players that he knows, essentially to kind of foster a more, a winner mentality, a stronger mentality, because we've had problems with mentality for years and years. It goes back to, our poor away form against top six, things like that. And clearly he is trying to, bring in a better mentality. And if you trust Allan a lot, which is very important, clearly he does want the player. He's very dedicated to getting the player. In terms of leadership qualities, what does Allan kind of represent? I know you mentioned there he's kind of part of the rebellion against De Laurentiis, but kind of maybe just from a football perspective and not kind of a football politics kind of perspective, kind of what does Allan kind of offer in the change room, maybe just out on the pitch? Because in Ancelotti's book, I think he mentions kind of the difference between like an on the pitch leader and off the pitch leader. He likes to have both, kind of where do you see kind of Allan really fitting into that kind of model?
I think Allan grew into the role at Napoli. I don't think he came in and was some huge character straight away. I think the more, he's always going to be a player who puts everything on the pitch. And I know that's a term that's used a lot, but if someone had asked me before, if you use that term, what player really sets an example and literally leaves everything on the pitch, as in, all the work ethic and everything, Allan would have been one of the ones I would have said, because he is that type. From the first minute to the last, you know, whether he's playing well or not, he will give everything. So from that perspective, I think that that's what endeared him to the fans, endeared him to his teammates as well. You know, they know that they're going to get a performance out of him. They know even if it's not going right, he's going to keep going. And I think that's really massively important. And I think that to the fans of Napoli, that's what they want to see. And I think obviously, you know, clubs like Everton as well, I can only imagine that you guys, you know, you're not going to always expect that everyone's going to be, every game's going to have the best game. But you know, as long as they seem to be wanting to put mistakes right or wanting to keep going, that's what's important. So for me, that's the sort of player he is, and that's what you'll get. The likes of when you talk about, you know, James Rodriguez and things, you know, players like that coming in. Again, you know, a player of that quality, that sort of passing range, that sort of would be quite an exciting link with Allan. But going back to just him as a person, again, you know, this whole thing in the dressing room, I wouldn't want to put him across as some rebellious character. I think he just got to the point of ridiculous. I mean, Naples, you can't talk about Naples and compare it to anywhere else because it's just crazy. So, you know, from that point of view, I don't think he's going to be any trouble in the dressing room. I don't think that's the type of person, you know, he is. I think that as well, like you say, Ancelotti and him have that relationship, and that's key. You know, that's really, really key. So, you know, like I said before, I think that what you will see from him is a player who just will consistently put in at least, you know, 7, 8, 10 out performances. You know, don't get me wrong, don't be expecting him to be scoring worldies every week or doing anything absolutely spectacular, but what he does is the quiet workman-like job, and he does it well.
Well, that's very important here. And kind of, if we move away from kind of the tactical football perspective, obviously a massive part of transfers now is the money. There's been so many different reports. Everyone's saying something different. There's rumoured that Napoli originally wanted around 40 million euros, then it went down to 30, then it's 5, and bonuses left, right and centre. Let's just kind of say that the rumoured fee is going to be 30, 35. Is that kind of what's kind of coming out of Italian press at the moment?
Yeah, I just bring this up now because I saw this just before we came on. It was quite recent, actually, 4 hours ago. But that fee you mentioned is exactly right. I mean, De Laurentiis originally had stuck this 50 million tag on, but you know, you don't really need to worry about that because De Laurentiis does that with all of his transfers. You know, he just slaps a massive thing on and says, right, that's the number, and it's never the number. It looks as though the reports I read just before here is that it looks as though it's almost concluded. Those fees are now looking like they're nearly agreed. So it is going to be around that 30 million mark. Depending on the 45 million bonus and add-on. So it does depend, but I think that's a good fee for him. You know, he is 29, we have to remember that. But this is a player who doesn't want to be there. And we've got to remember as well, De Laurentiis doesn't really want him to be there. Whilst he might tell the rest of the world that this is one of his key components of his team, which, he, you know, in a sense he has been, he isn't now. So for me, that sort of fee is a good fee for a player like this. You know, when you talk about before the likes of Atletico Madrid and PSG wanting him, not so long ago as well, you know, and obviously still potentially interested, you know, to be able to get that and get it over the line is really important. And Napoli as well, you've got to think Napoli's situation as well, that, you know, you're looking at them recently, okay, they've been in the top couple of places in the league, but now you've got the Sunning Group coming into Inter, backing them hugely. They've got more money than sense now. We're talking about them in the next couple of years being at the levels of PSG and Man City. AC Milan with Dell'Ott management are starting to pump money into the club and change. Juventus can continue to do that. New ownerships at Roma with the Frederick Group. You know, there's a lot of money going in, and De Laurentiis is sat there, and whilst he's got money, he's not got money on that level. And that's why you've seen a lot of links to people like Koulibaly now leaving, 28, 29 years old. Can get good money for him. Allan, is it worth trying to let him go? And they're starting to try and rebuild this squad. It's going to be a younger squad because a lot of these players who've, you know, okay, the likes of Dries Mertens, he's signed a new contract. There's no point in getting rid of him because of his age. But the likes of players like Allan and Koulibaly, especially Callejon, who are all at that similar age, have all been there probably a little bit too long now as well. You know, De Laurentiis is needing to fund a rebuild, because if he doesn't and he keeps these players, especially like the likes of Allan, who he can get money for, and he keeps him on the bench, what's the point? You know, Koulibaly, you could argue he's slightly on the decline at the moment, and he can cash in. So he needs to fund that project. He needs to really reassess what's going on there. And so he's probably not in a strong position like he would have been a couple of years ago when his team were flying high under Maurizio Sarri, second in the table, and he could turn around and say, listen, 50, 60 million for Allan. And that would have been fair. But now, you know, you have to look at Napoli's perspective and think there's a lot of competition coming up around them. And whilst they never really believe potentially they can go and win the league, they need to keep finishing in the Champions League places, and they're going to be under a lot of competition now.
Definitely, because obviously our fans have kind of been talking about is 30 million too much for a 29-year-old. Personally, I don't think it is, because you're just paying for quality at that point, because we've spent money on young players who might turn out good or have potential. But at the moment, we just need kind of that instant effect and kind of quality. Do you see his adaptation to the English game kind of going well? Because we've seen players come from, other European leagues and they struggle in the Premier League. Do you see that being much of a problem for him?
It's always a difficult question, this one, because when we see a lot of players coming over to Italy and struggling because of the game is so different. It's so different it's not actually that different nowadays for the speed and intensity of it, but it's about how Patrick's ever described it the best. I was watching Inter train not so long ago, and they train in grids. So, for instance, if you've got Patrick ever would tell you that at Juventus, he would be able to go from almost like a chess game, from grid 1 to grid 5, and he'd know his role. And that's what you do. Whereas in England, the game's just as fast, it's just as much intensity, but everyone's got a free role. So what he's doing is actually running further all the time at more of an intense level. So that's why it's more physically tiring. Now, Allan will be playing in that sort of grid area, but Ancelotti as well will know how to get the best out of him. So he's got more of an engine to survive in the Premier League than most players, than a lot of players in the Premier League already. So I've got no problems with that. Absolutely no problems. I imagine that, he will be allowed to play with a little bit more freedom in the Premier League, but that won't be a thing that's going to upset him. That's going to be something that he may even bring the best, even more out of him. Okay, he'll be used to playing in a certain tactical way. Ancelotti will be able to see that, but Ancelotti knows the differences between these two leagues. And he's an intelligent player, so he'll pick it up really easily.
That's also very good here. Obviously, very positive signs kind of coming out of this. Obviously, Andy, you were going to come on and kind of talk about the player negatively, but clearly he is a player that we need. We need a player like him, basically, now. We need that instant quality. We need a player that Ancelotti trusts. Now, my final question really is going to be, because obviously nothing is confirmed yet, it's kind of a double-headed kind of question. We know negotiations are traditionally difficult with Napoli. Can you see this kind of dragging on? And also, is this move kind of realistic? Because obviously we can always talk about the English press, but there's much more to be said coming out of the Italian media that isn't said the English media. So can you see this dragging on? And also, do you see it kind of realistically happening in the end?
I think a lot of deals will get done a lot quicker now, because there's hardly any time between the end of the season and the start of next season. You can see this isn't just Napoli or Everton. There's a lot of deals being done quite quickly now. Napoli, as I said, I think they need the money more, so I think it could get done quicker for that reason. And finally, really, I think that Gattuso will want to reinvest that money very, very quickly as well, and not start doing it when you're a month into the season already. So for that reason alone, I think it can get done. The press in Italy have been very, very positive about this happening, and it does seem to be gathering pace. I need to read more on that report. I was just reading before I came on, but it seems as though everything looks as though it's almost been agreed now. And so that process should go through quite quickly. Correct me if I may very well stand corrected, because it is Napoli, like you say. There can always be a last minute twist with these things. But I think that the player wants to go, the club want him to go. Even if they don't say that. And Everton and Ancelotti are very, very keen on him. So everything works in the right way. So hopefully you guys can get this over the line sooner rather than later, and I'll quite enjoy seeing him play in the Premier League.
Well, that's very good to hear. It seems like we are in a very strong position going into this. There's been times where we've been negotiating for players and either they don't want to come, like Højbjerg earlier on in the window, and he ended up going to Spurs, or the club doesn't want to sell him. I mean, this is kind of everything they want to transfer. We want him, player wants us, Napoli want Rid. It's kind of the perfect combination. So, I mean, that's very pleasing to hear. Obviously, there are some fans getting kind of agitated, let's say, at the lack of kind of transfer activity so far. But obviously, no one's really done much yet. But something's just going to have to, a penny's going to have to drop, and then I think it will kind of just all start happening. Players, because I think we need to sell players. Definitely, we've got a lot of dead wood in our squad. Players like Sandro Ramirez, Yannick Bolasie. If they're moved on, whether it's on loan, permanent, whatever it is, really, we'll then see more action happening. So thank you very much for coming on. That was definitely a very interesting insight.
No problems.
Thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to check out all social media down below. Of course, check out Richard's social media. I thought that was a brilliant kind of insight into the player that we've heard a lot about, kind of in terms of transfer speculation, but maybe not too much about the kind of player he is. So we've got all that in this video for you. I think we've also already done kind of our perspective on Allan. Kind of a few of the lads kind of got together and spoke about that. So definitely check that out on the channel. Let's kind of hope Everton's transfer window definitely kind of starts kicking into gear soon. We definitely need recruitments. We also need to sell players though. So it is a mix of patience, but also we definitely need new recruits soon. So I think we'll definitely start to see some action in the next couple of weeks. It sounds like this deal's not far away from what people are saying in the English and Italian media. Seems like the clubs are a lot closer together in terms of their valuation of the player than they were originally. Then it's all about personal terms, medical, all that. But the player clearly wants to play for Ancelotti, which is a massive pulling factor. So thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to check out all the other videos on social media, as I said, and join us next time on the Toffee Blues.